Reporting from Monterey Park, California, I'm Robin Roberts. Wherever the story is, we're going to take you there. You're streaming ABC News live.
Tonight, the man believed to be the mastermind behind the October 7th attacks is dead. Known as the Butcher, Yahya Sinwar was thought to be hiding in a vast network of tunnels beneath the Gaza Strip, not seen since the October 7th attack that killed more than 1,200 people last year. Tonight, the Israeli foreign minister is declaring him dead, killed by Israeli forces. The reaction in Israel as families of those killed and still held hostage react to the news and what Sinwar's killing means for the growing conflict. Plus, the sprint to Election Day, the dueling 2024 events tonight as Vice President Kamala Harris meets with voters in Wisconsin, and former President Donald Trump attends the Al Smith charity dinner as he doubles down on his remarks regarding Harris's race just days before the election. And
the number one concern we have on Election Day are some of the challenges that we have yet to face. There are some uncertainties, particularly with generative artificial intelligence and the ways that those might be used.
As state officials across the country gather to prepare for Election Day, the emerging threat that's top of mind, AI. In our latest installment of Protecting Your Vote, we report on how one battleground state is training its officials to confront disruptions head-on. Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We're following those stories and much more, including new details on the final moments of Liam Payne's life before his tragic fall and death in Argentina. Plus, the former Olympian that's now being accused of running a multi-billion-dollar international drug ring, that suspect who's now on the run. And she's known as the Princess of Mexican Music. Our exclusive sit-down with Angela Aguilar, who speaks out for the first time on the gossip and controversy she's now embroiled in and what keeps motivating her award-winning music. But we do begin with that major development in the Middle East. Israeli forces have killed the head of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar. Sinwar was the architect of the October 7th horrific terror attack. Taking him out was one of the main goals of Israel's war with Hamas. He was believed to be hiding deep inside Gaza's tunnels. But 24 hours ago, an Israeli military drone looking for suspects after a firefight spotted Sinwar on the third floor of a residential building sitting in the midst of the rubble. Shortly after that, a sniper took him out. It wasn't until this morning that he was identified as the chief of Hamas, first by sight and then by DNA. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed Israelis today, saying, "As we have promised to do, we've settled the score." In Tel Aviv tonight, Israelis celebrated the death of an enemy, but there are new concerns over the fate of those hostages, including Americans still being held in Gaza. What impact will this have on the multiple fronts of this war? And what is President Biden's message for Israel tonight? Former Defense Department official Mick Mulroy is standing by, but we begin with Tom Sufi-Burge from Tel Aviv.
Tonight, this Israeli military drone capturing the final moments of Israel's most wanted terrorist, the mastermind of the October 7th terror attack, Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. This graphic image showing his dead body after he was killed by Israeli forces. It was IDF reservists, not special ops, who came across Sinwar by chance during a routine operation in Rafah yesterday, flying that drone into a building after a gun battle, spotting an armed man sitting in a chair, his face covered, his hand bleeding after being shot. The man throwing an object at the drone, soldiers soon after killing him. But at this point, they still didn't know it was Sinwar. In fact, it wasn't until today when a separate unit checking the building found his body and recognized it was the Hamas leader, confirming his identity through DNA, dental records and fingerprints. Tonight, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying Sinwar's death brings the end of the war closer, but it's not over yet. President Biden today speaking with Netanyahu from Air Force One, congratulating him on Sinwar's assassination. The two leaders agreeing this is an opportunity to secure the release of the hostages, vowing to work together.
They have a lot of blood in his hands. American blood, Israeli blood, and others.
US officials telling us Sinwar was the main roadblock in the latest ceasefire and hostage negotiations. Across Israel today, cheers, but also fear.
Well, they're chanting enough. The hope amongst these families and friends of the hostages is that the death of Yahya Sinwar could open the door for the end of the war in Gaza and a deal to get their loved ones home.
Family members of the remaining hostages, including Americans, taking to the streets, now more concerned than ever.
I'm not shedding one single tear for the life of him, but now there's no central leadership. So the hostages are now left to the mercy of the local captor, which is much more dangerous for them.
Killing Sinwar has been one of the main goals of Israel's war with Hamas. Sinwar in hiding for more than a year and seen here in a Gaza tunnel in video released by the IDF in February. Today, the IDF posting 3 words: eliminated Yahya Sinwar. Vice President Harris today saying justice has been served.
Sinwar was the mastermind of October 7, the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust.
And saying this about his killing.
The United States, Israel, and the entire world are better off as a result.
And tonight, Sinwar's assassination dealing a major blow to Hamas amid the threat of wider escalation in this region.
That's something that has concerned people for weeks now. Tom Sufi Burridge joins us now live. And Tom, talk about the impact of this assassination for the security of the entire region.
It really matters, Linsey, because, you know, the war in Lebanon, those rocket attacks from Hezbollah which sparked the war, which Israel says it needs to stop, I mean, that's directly linked to the war in Gaza. Now, you know, Yahya Sinwar was the leader of Hamas. You know, he's basically been directing Hamas operations. He's been in hiding. He's evaded capture for the best part of a year. The IDF had as one of its key war aims to take him out. Now they've killed him. It matters. You know, it still raises important questions about what comes next, but it might just open the door a little bit more to the possibility that the war could end and that there could be a deal to get more of the hostages, including Americans, home. Look, Yahya Sinwar has been a long-term nemesis of Israel, and we've taken a longer look now, take a watch of who he was and why his death matters.
He's accused of masterminding the most deadly terror attack in Israeli history. A well-orchestrated and brutal operation.
This offensive is the mission of his life. This is a jihad.
Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in Gaza, Israel's most wanted terrorist. For Israelis, Sinwar was the face of and brain behind the most heinous crimes.
You know, he has murder eyes. He's very, very smart. He's not a psychopath.
When you're trying to find the seeds of this brutality of October the 7th, you must understand not only the ideology, but also the personality of Yahya Sinwar.
Well, for Palestinians who chanted his name in the streets, he was a symbol of resistance to Israeli oppression.
He's a leader. He has a charisma.
Yahya Sinwar grew up in a refugee camp. His parents reportedly displaced during Israel's War of Independence. Hamas, or Islamic Resistance Movement, designated a terrorist organization by many Western nations, was founded by the paraplegic imam, dressed all in white, Sheikh Ahmed Yassin. Sinwar, close to Yassin, was put in charge of Hamas's brutal internal security arm, the Majd, earning himself the nickname, the Butcher of Khan Yunis.
He was one of the commanders of the military wing, and especially of the unit which called Majd, which was focused on finding and executing collaborators.
In 1989, an Israeli court sentenced Sinwar to 4 life sentences for his role in killing suspected Palestinian informers and plotting to murder 2 Israeli soldiers. He spent the next 22 years in Israeli jails, including at Nafcha prison in the Negev desert.
In the years he spent inside this prison, Sinwar's ruthless reputation evolved. According to one of his interrogators, he killed fellow inmates he accused of being collaborators with Israel, and he issued orders to other Hamas leaders.
So I asked him during the interrogation why you are not married. How come you are Arabic, you are 29? He told me the Hamas is my wife, The Hamas is my mother, the Hamas is my father.
So these are your notes from when you were working.
Sinwar's interrogator was Micha Kubi, an officer in Israeli internal security Shin Bet, who still has some of his notes from hours of interrogation.
Look, I interrogate with Yahya Sinwar at least 150 to 180 hours. He was very tough.
And he says in those long conversations, Sinwar didn't hide his brutal methods.
He killed 12 people by his hand.
Did he almost boast to you that he killed those people? And did he even tell you?
No, I can describe how did he kill them? With machete. He preferred to kill.
Machete?
With machete, of course. That's the reason people of Gaza Strip called him, the butcher of Khan Yunis.
But that image of Sinwar isn't shared by one of his former fellow Palestinian inmates.
Did people in the prison fear him?
مش خوف بس في كمان رهبة إله.
Ismat Mansour was locked up with Sinwar for 15 years.
He speaks Hebrew very well. He loved to know everything about the Israeli army, the Israeli intelligence, the Israeli security.
He knows his enemy very well.
Yeah, very well.
And Tom, you've spent a long time reporting on Sinwar. What impact do you think that this will have specifically for Hamas's operations?
Well, I mean, look, it does matter. I mean, you cut off the head of the snake, but the organization will still go on. I mean, Hamas is not finished. There's no question about that. The Israeli Prime Minister tonight, Benjamin Netanyahu, is still saying that that is the goal, to take out Hamas, to degrade them to the point where they basically don't play a role in Gaza in the future. He's appealing to people in Gaza to give information to Israel, to get the hostages home, to abandon Hamas. I don't think there's any sign that that's going to happen in the near term. Hamas is still fighting. There's still fierce fighting up in northern Gaza. The IDF has launched a really, really big operation there. It's causing absolute misery for the civilian population in that area who are desperate for aid. So look, it could change the picture on the ground, but we don't know who's going to replace Yahya Sinwar. Israel has killed its leaders in the past. They've been replaced, and the organization has continued to be an arch enemy for the Israeli state. Linsey?
All right, Tom Sufi Burge for us, reporting from Tel Aviv once again tonight. Tom, thank you. For more now, we're joined by ABC News contributor and former Defense Department official Mick Mulroy. Mick, thank you so much for taking the time. Taking Sinwar out has been a priority of the IDF since the October 7th attack, according to Israeli officials. Is there any scenario that the U.S. may have played a role in assisting Israel with this execution?
So, Linsey, I do believe the U.S. intelligence community, the CIA specifically, has been working with the Israeli Shin Bet to try to locate Hamas leaders in Gaza and also, of course, to locate the hostages. But this really does look like it was just an opportunity by a unit that was on patrol and ran across 3 armed terrorists. It doesn't look like this was driven specifically by intelligence. It was, in fact, an accident, if you will, but it's certainly well done by that reservist unit. But it doesn't look like there was any particular intelligence component to this that led directly to Sinwar's death.
Many of the statements from the Defense Secretary and Vice President Harris to Speaker Johnson and President Biden have spoken about the opportunity for progress now that he's been killed. Is that realistic, or do you think that Hamas has only further entrenched itself in their strategy?
I do think it's realistic. Quite frankly, he was the leader, he was the operational planner, and he was, according to the National Security Council, the biggest obstacle to a ceasefire agreement. He was simply uninterested in it. And Tom's report really shows how much he did not care about the Palestinian people. After all, he's called the butcher of Khan Yunis for killing Palestinians. So I think this does provide an opportunity. It depends on who replaces him. The deputy, Khalil Haya, is in Doha right now, and he's more on the political side. So I think the U.S. and potentially Israel do view this as an opportunity to try to restart ceasefire negotiations, which had effectively ended until this event, and see if they can't get somewhere without him in the way.
And that was going to be my next question. Has there been any word just yet that those ceasefire discussions have resumed?
I think we're seeing a lot of talk come out of the White House, quite frankly, talking about how this is an opportunity. Of course, we don't know who will be put in charge, who will be the actual leader of Hamas, but Normally, the deputy steps up to take that role. And this individual, Khalil, it has been part of the negotiations in the past, and he's on the political side. So I think if he becomes the leader of Hamas, a lot of countries, including Egypt, Qatar, and the United States, do view this as an opportunity to restart these negotiations. If Israel does too, and Hamas does too, then we might see some progress where we saw nothing progressing yesterday until this event happened.
So in just the few seconds that we have here, if you're the family member of one of those hostages, are you feeling more hopeful tonight?
I would be, yes, absolutely. I think that this shows Prime Minister Netanyahu has gotten a lot of his objectives accomplished in Gaza. The only one that really remains, of course, is the complete destruction of Hamas, which is very difficult, but primarily the recovery of these hostages. And this does give a way to start these conversations again, potentially with a Hamas that's willing to negotiate and come up with something that's acceptable to Israel.
Mick Mulroy, we thank you so much for your time and insight. New details tonight about the final hours of Liam Payne, the One Direction star who died in a fall from a balcony in Argentina. Newly released 911 calls reveal hotel workers reaching out for help out of concern for Payne's erratic behavior and fears for his life. Meanwhile, his bandmates are talking about his loss. Louis Tomlinson saying, "I lost a brother," and Zayn Malik in a post, "I will cherish all the memories I have with you." Our Trevor Ault has the latest.
Tonight, disturbing new details in the tragic death of One Direction member Liam Payne. Late yesterday, the 31-year-old pop star falling about 40 feet from his third-floor hotel room in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Paramedics pronouncing him dead at the scene. The security ministry now tells ABC News the singer jumped from the balcony, but authorities are still investigating if it was intentional. He is believed to have been alone in his hotel room, but reports say earlier the singer had been acting aggressively and erratically in the hotel lobby. A concerned hotel manager making this 911 call in Spanish requesting help.
Y necesitamos que nos envíen a alguien urgente para una habitación que tiene balcón y bueno, estamos un poco con temor de que haga algo que le ponga en riesgo su vida.
The prosecutor's office confirms these photos shared with ABC News were taken inside Payne's hotel room, appearing to show drugs and a smashed television. A preliminary autopsy report saying Payne's death was a result of multiple traumas and internal and external bleeding, adding Payne didn't seem to adopt a reflex posture to protect himself, and that he could have fallen while in a state of semi or total unconsciousness. Overnight, shocked fans gathering outside the Casa Sur Hotel. Payne had been in Argentina since the beginning of October when he attended the concert of former One Direction bandmate Niall Horan. Payne seen dancing in the crowd.
Morning, everybody.
He posted this video to Snapchat just hours before his death. Payne leaves behind a son. Tonight, his family saying, "We are heartbroken. Liam will forever live in our hearts and we'll remember him for his kind, funny, and brave soul." And for the first time, his former bandmates speaking out in a joint statement, "We're completely devastated by the news of Liam's passing. We will miss him terribly."
And Linsey, Liam Payne had previously been open about his struggles with substance abuse. The medical examiner has now requested a toxicology report. Linsey.
Trevor, thank you. A massive settlement has been reached in a sexual abuse scandal involving the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. Church officials agreed to pay $880 million to more than 1,300 victims who they claim were assaulted as children by clergy members. Speaking on behalf of the Archdiocese, Archbishop Jose Gomez apologized for every incident, saying he hopes the settlement helps provide some healing for what the victims suffered. A new report by the Department of Homeland Security details what it calls, quote, systematic issues within the Secret Service. The review has found numerous security failures leading up to the assassination attempt of former President Trump at an outdoor rally in Butler, Pennsylvania in June. The special commission warns that without reform for the Secret Service, what happened in Butler, quote, can and will happen again. 3 states are launching a new push to roll back access to the abortion pill nationwide. Missouri, Kansas, and Idaho are challenging FDA regulations that ease access to pills, including dispensing by mail, claiming the drug is dangerous and costly because women end up in emergency rooms. The Supreme Court rejected an earlier version of the lawsuit, ruling the doctors and activists who brought it could not prove harm. The states hope their case will be more successful. With just 19 days now until the presidential election, former President Donald Trump stunned many during a a town hall telling a voter in the audience that January 6th was a day of love. Vice President Kamala Harris then blasted Trump, saying the country and the world saw the violence that day. Just a short time ago, Harris addressed a crowd in Wisconsin and had this to say.
Now, we here know January 6th was a tragic day for our country. It was a day of terrible violence with attacks on law enforcement. 140 law enforcement officers were injured that day. Law enforcement officers were killed that day. And what did Donald Trump say last night about January 6th? He called it, quote, a day of love. And we are all clear. The American people are exhausted with his gaslighting. Exhausted. Enough. Enough.
Tonight, the moment in that Trump town hall, what that voter asked and the subsequent fallout. Mary Bruce reports from Wisconsin tonight.
Tonight in battleground Wisconsin, Vice President Kamala Harris taking aim at Donald Trump for his new comments calling January 6th a, quote, day of love.
We here know January 6th was a tragic day. It was a day of terrible violence. There were attacks on law enforcement. 140 law enforcement officers were injured. Some were killed. And what did Donald Trump say last night about January 6th? He called it a, quote, a day of love.
Trump's comments came in a Univision town hall.
We don't know it's just Neil Trump.
In response to a question from a Republican voter, Ramiro Gonzalez, who told the former president he was disturbed by his actions on January 6th.
Of the overall, which nobody sees and nobody shows. But that was a day of love from the standpoint of the millions. It's like hundreds of thousands.
Though Trump says the crowd on January 6th didn't come because of him, he was the one who told them to travel to Washington, promising, quote, it will be wild. Tonight, that voter saying he won't be voting for Trump, quote, because he didn't tell me the truth. And Harris not holding back.
It points out something that everyone here knows. The American people are exhausted with his gaslighting. Exhausted.
In the final 2.5 weeks of this campaign, Harris warning Trump is a danger to America, particularly after saying he would use the military on what he calls the enemy within. In a contentious interview with Fox News, Harris pushing back when the interviewer played a clip of Trump denying it all.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening.
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy.
And Mary Bruce joins us now from Harris's rally in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Mary, who's the vice president trying to appeal to, and where the campaign's headed next?
Linsey, well, look, Kamala Harris is really trying to hammer this message as we head into the final sprint that Donald Trump is a danger to democracy, and trying really to reach out to those Republicans and independents who have real doubts about backing Trump in just a few weeks. And next tomorrow, both Trump and Harris will be in the key state of Michigan as they try and shore up support in the Rust Belt, Linsey.
All right, Mary Bruce for us. Thank you, Mary. Still much more to get to here on Prime tonight. The former Canadian Olympic snowboarder accused of running a transnational drug trafficking operation and attempting to murder those who got in his way. Tonight, his whereabouts are unknown. But next, with less than 3 weeks to go, state election officials have their guards up, hoping to ferret out misinformation, disinformation, and a frequent generator of both artificial intelligence.
What exactly is going to happen? We're not sure. What are we best preparing for? Everything. Except Godzilla, we're preparing for about everything. Because if Godzilla shows up, all bets are off.
Reporting
reporting from the 2024 Summer Games in Paris. I'm Inez de la Quatera. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Tonight, state election officials across the country are bracing for the final stretch of this divisive and unpredictable presidential campaign. Many in key battlegrounds are working overtime to prevent any dramatic disruptions that could compromise the vote. In tonight's Prime Focus, we take a closer look at what some officials say is their #1 concern: artificial intelligence. Our Devin Dwyer has that story from Phoenix.
Oh my God, we're all gonna die.
Welcome to elections, folks.
It's the quiet before the coming storm.
We're training all of our elections officials to make sure that they're familiar with some of the weapons that might be deployed against them.
No one can predict the future.
As state officials in Arizona gather to prepare for Election Day, an emerging threat is top of mind.
We already know of some campaigns that are using AI in Arizona.
For the first time, the officials who oversee voting in this battleground state are training on how to confront disruptions from artificial intelligence, or AI.
This is an AI going on right now. She's calling one of our staff members, telling us that we have to do something. I have got multiple calls that you guys are not responding to your records requests.
Yeah, I think the more important thing under employee and staffing right now is cross-training to ensure continuity of operations.
These exercises, they walk us through those worst-case scenarios so that we can be critically thinking on our toes.
Adrian Fontes, Arizona's Democrat Secretary of State, says deepfake video and voice cloning technology pose unprecedented scenarios for November 5th.
The #1 concern we have on Election Day are some of the challenges that we have yet to face. There are some uncertainties, particularly with generative artificial intelligence and the ways that those might be used.
Experts say AI is already being used to try to disrupt how we vote.
What a bunch of malarkey. It's important that you save your vote for the November election.
An AI-generated robocall mimicking President Biden's voice was used to dissuade New Hampshire Democrats from voting in the January primary.
Your vote makes a difference in November, not this Tuesday.
The man behind the call was hit with a $6 million fine by the FCC and faces criminal charges. Taylor Swift said she endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris on Instagram last month, in part to refute this AI-generated deepfake, falsely showing her endorsing Donald Trump. And OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, says it shut down a secret Iranian effort using its tools to manipulate voter opinion, while the Justice Department says Russia is also using AI to feed political disinformation on social media.
The primary targets of interest are going to be in swing states, and they're going to be swing voters.
Lucas Hansen is tracking the use of AI in politics for Civ AI, a nonprofit he co-founded to educate the public about the dangers.
An even bigger one, potentially, is trying to manipulate voter turnout, which in some ways is easier than trying to get people to actually change their mind. What we can do here is generate some fake news. So I just pressed a button and...
Hansen used AI to generate a false report about me in a matter of seconds and showed us just how easy it could be for a campaign or a foreign adversary to use AI to try to suppress Election Day voting.
This tweet, which you could imagine going out on Election Day, says that there are potential shooters found near various polling locations and that election will reopen the next day, which is not a thing that happens, but for a lot of people that are perhaps less familiar with the voting process, that might be plausible. And so you could imagine this decreasing voter turnout pretty significantly.
The feds say while the risks aren't entirely new, AI is amplifying attacks on our election with greater speed and sophistication at a lower cost.
Those threats are being supercharged by advanced technologies, the most disruptive of which is artificial intelligence.
In a bulletin to state election officials, the Department of Homeland Security warns AI voice and video tools could be used to create fake election records, impersonate election staff to gain access to sensitive information, generate fake voter calls to overwhelm call centers, and more convincingly spread false information online.
What should people look for as they're consuming election information online?
So in images, at least for now, oftentimes, if you look at the hands, then there will be the wrong number of fingers. or there'll be not enough appendages. For audio, a lot of times it still sounds relatively robotic.
Social media companies and U.S. intelligence agencies say they're prepared to alert voters about malicious AI deepfakes and misinformation, but they can't catch it all. More than 3 in 4 Americans believe it's likely AI will be used to affect the election outcome. And many voters worry they're not prepared to detect fake photos, video, and audio on their own.
In the long term, if you see something that seems implausible and it also makes you really, really mad, then there's a pretty good chance that that's not real. So part of it is you have to learn to listen to your gut.
Do we think that folks are going to get threatened? Yeah.
In states like Arizona, which could decide a razor-tight presidential race, the stakes are higher than ever.
Ultimately, the most important thing is letting voters know this is where you go to, where you actively go to get that official, accurate information. We want voters to go to their election officials.
As the men and women who make our elections run brace for another unpredictable year.
AI is it's the new kid on the block. What exactly is going to happen? We're not sure. What are we best preparing for? Everything. Except Godzilla, we're preparing for about everything. Because if Godzilla shows up, all bets are off.
Preparing for all case scenarios there. Our thanks to Devin Dwyer for that. Still much more to get to tonight. Coming up, the study that shows more promising signs that weight loss medications can help lower the risks of overdose. But next, in the age when anything you want is just a click away, secondhand apparel is having a feverish comeback. A look at the vintage shopping boom by the numbers.
Here at 10 Downing Street.
Wherever the story is,
we're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live. You're streaming ABC News Live. Reporting from the Normandy coast for the 80th anniversary of D-Day, I'm David Muir. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Welcome back, everyone. Even in this online shopping age, secondhand apparel is rising in popularity. Buying vintage, upcycled, or reused is now a reason to shop at a brick and mortar store. We check out the vintage shopping boom in tonight's By the Numbers. There are now more than 25,000 resale stores in the U.S., and the secondhand clothing sales were up 11% in 2023 compared to the previous year. That's according to data compiled by Capital One. The used clothing market has exploded to $43 billion in sales as of last year, up from just $23 billion in 2018. That growth is 7 times the rate of the broader retail industry, according to the online consignment platform ThredUp. Mass market retailers are getting in on the vintage boom, too. Inside a large New York City store, Banana Republic opened a 225-square-foot shop selling their clothing from the 80s and 90s. H&M and Madewell have followed suit in selling secondhand items. Even small towns have seen resale stores fill storefronts that have sat empty since the pandemic. 7 secondhand shops have opened up in Santa Cruz, California's downtown, just since 2020. And the nation's oldest and largest secondhand store operator, Goodwill, has opened some 400 stores in the last decade, including boutique shops featuring designer brands. Shopping vintage or resale not only offers a creative avenue for self-expression, but it's also good for the planet, sending clothes on to their next home instead of to the landfill. And we still have much more ahead here on Prime tonight. With her latest album up for a Latin Grammy, there are few names in Mexican music bigger than Angela Aguilar, and also getting top billing as of late. Her love life. Our Maria Villarreal sits down with her to get the scoop. And get out your favorite superhero costume. It's not quite Halloween just yet, but it is Comic-Con, and perhaps none are bigger than New York's, which just kicked off today. The former Olympian accused of running a multi-billion-dollar international drug ring, a possible end in sight to the IV fluid shortage, and remembering a beloved actress and dancer who was one of the last performers from the golden age of Hollywood musicals. These stories and more in tonight's Rundown.
A grand jury in Georgia indicted the father and son connected to the Appalachia High School shooting. The alleged shooter, 14-year-old Colt Gray, faces 55 charges, and his father, Colin Gray, faces 29 charges. Investigators say Colin Gray bought the weapon used in the shooting for his son as a Christmas gift months after he was investigated for a separate shooting threat. 2 students and 2 teachers were killed in the September 4th shooting. A former Canadian Olympic snowboarder is charged with running a major drug trafficking operation that hired hitmen to murder anyone thought to be blocking their shipments. Officials issued a federal arrest warrant for Ryan Wedding, who participated in the 2002 Olympics. Officials said the organization moved 60 tons of cocaine per year through the Americas and were also involved in multiple murders, including that of 2 parents killed in Canada this year in a case of mistaken identity. There's a $50,000 reward for information leading to Wedding's arrest and extradition. Amid a shortage of IV fluid solutions in the U.S., the Baxter manufacturing plant responsible for most of the country's IV fluid protection is working on a phased restart after being impacted by Hurricane Helene. Baxter said its North Cove site has fully restored utilities and was finalizing deep cleaning of the facility with a goal to restart production in phases by the end of the year. The Biden administration revealed on Friday that it invoked war powers from the Defense Production Act to help Baxter rebuild the facility.
The largest study of its kind showing even more promising signs that weight loss medications like Ozempic and Wegovy can help lower the risks of intoxication and overdose. The landmark research looked at over 1.3 million people, 500,000 with opioid use disorder, and more than 800,000 with alcohol use disorder, and found those taking Ozempic had a 40% lower chance of experiencing an opioid overdose. The risk of alcohol intoxication cut in half compared to those not taking the drug.
Actor and dancer Linsey has died. She was best known for starring as Nellie Forbush in the 1958 film South Pacific, which earned her a Golden Globe nomination.
I'm gonna wash that man right out of my hair.
She appeared across film and television as well as on stage with a touring show and residencies in Las Vegas. Linsey was 93 years old. New York Comic-Con is officially underway. The largest comic and pop culture event on the East Coast kicked off at the Javits Center in Manhattan Thursday, with hundreds of thousands expected to attend throughout its 4 days. Comic-Con features panels from hit TV shows, movies, and comics, as well as celebrity appearances and, of course, some very creative costumes.
Demi Moore has shared an update about caring for her ex-husband Bruce Willis as he battles dementia and how she's still finding moments of beauty in their time together. Our Ariel Reshef has this story.
Demi Moore giving a candid update on caring for ex-husband Bruce Willis almost 2 years after his diagnosis with frontotemporal dementia.
The disease is what the disease is, and I think, you have to be in real deep acceptance of what that is.
Moore, who was married to the Die Hard star from 1987 to 2000 and shares 3 children and 1 grandchild with Willis, speaking openly on Sunday at the 2024 Hamptons International Film Festival.
What I, always encourage is to just meet them where they're at.
The family sharing moments on social media, announcing in 2023 that Willis has been battling frontotemporal dementia, an illness that causes a decline in cognitive function that can affect speech, language comprehension, and behavior after he was initially diagnosed with aphasia.
Bruce Willis's family, his wife, his ex-wife, his children have really done an incredible job, if you think about it, of bringing awareness to FTD. They continue to share insight through photos, through anecdotes from their visits together, just showing that he's still smiling and that they are just showing all the love that they can in the world for him.
Moore visited Willis just days ago with their granddaughter, saying time is precious.
I was there, 2 days ago with my granddaughter, and being able, to share with whatever we have for however long we have it.
Angela Aguilar, she's the princess of the Mexican music royal family, a Grammy-nominated artist and an entrepreneur. But despite all that success, it's her marriage to Mexican music star Christian Nodal that had her making headlines over the summer. But now the 21-year-old is exclusively setting the record straight and focusing on her future. Here's ABC's Maria Villarreal.
Fresh off her 21st birthday, Angela Aguilar has a lot to celebrate. At the close of her family tour, Aribello Hasta Los Huesos, Aguilar sat down with us in Los Angeles to catch up.
It's been a minute.
I know.
How are you?
Good to see you.
You look amazing.
When we first met back in 2022, she was 19, in between concerts and working on new music.
We have a lot to catch up on, man.
Girl,
Stop. I know.
Just as the family was wrapping up their tour this summer, news broke of Angela's rekindled relationship with former boyfriend and singer Cristian Nodal. Nodal is a superstar in his own right, known for hit songs like Adiós Amor.
Adiós, amor, me voy de ti.
He boasts 22 million listeners on Spotify and is currently the top regional Mexican music artist. In 2018, Nodal joined the Aguilar family on tour, and then in 2020, the hitmaker released a song featuring Aguilar titled Dime Como Quieres. It's a flirty song where Nodal asks his co-singer how she would like to be loved. Fast forward to May of this year, Nodal announced his breakup with Argentinian artist and mother of his child, Casu. The pair had been together for about 18 months. By mid-June, Aguilar and Nodal let the world know they were together again, and the rumors erupted.
I think that there's been a lot of conversation about how you guys have found your way back to each other. One thing I haven't read, though, is that story in your own words.
Well, because everyone already makes up everything. Why do I have to say things? They have their own, literally, telenovelas about it.
From dramatic telenovelas with millions of hits portraying their version of the couple's relationship.
Hola. Ay, amiga, soy feliz de que tú y Tristan estén juntos. Soy fan de su relación.
To online bloggers.
Aguilar and Cristian Nodal.
All the señoras and doñas were right.
This Spanish language morning show even brought psychics on to predict the future of Aguilar's relationship, proving Angela's personal life is far from private.
When we last talked 2 years ago, we talked a lot about some of the songs that you were putting out, having to do a lot with heartbreak and love. And I feel like, right, we might have been talking a little bit about Cristian and your relationship with him previously, but we didn't go there. How about now?
It's crazy because since I got married, I've only been writing, like, heartbreak songs.
Really?
Yes. Like, I think I've written, like, 2 love songs, but, like, I'm just, like, a dolida at heart, you know? But, like, he knows I love him, so it's okay.
Were you heartbroken then when we talked 2 years ago?
You know, I think I've always been very heartbroken. I think my heart has been broken a lot since I was very, very little.
And we're not talking about just Cristian.
No, we're talking about life, girl. You know, I think when you're in the industry very, very young, you know, you have to mature really, really quickly. And you expose yourself, or for me, I exposed myself to things that, like, I should have waited a little bit to do. So my heart was constantly getting broken, not by people, but by the illusions that I had of the people that surrounding me.
Expectations.
Exactly. So, you know, of course Christian broke my heart a while ago, but now it's together again.
Then, in July, Aguilar and Nodal secretly got married, sending fans and the media into another tailspin.
What is the story?
It's not the one that they're portraying. And I don't feel like right now in this point in my life, I don't really feel like I have to explain anything to anyone. I think that people are being villainized, and I think people are being badly portrayed. I think that they're not putting our characters where they should be. I don't think that they don't even know 5% of the story that they're trying to tell, but that's okay because that's what sells. And we're in an industry, and we're working. You know, when I signed up to be a singer, but I got all of this, you know? So it's part of it. The only thing that I can say is that, you know, all the parties in hand are together and united, and we're all on the same page, and no one's heart got broken. No one's, you know, we have a clear consciousness.
Angela began singing when she was 3 and is considered Mexican music royalty. Her grandparents are famed actress Flor Silvestre and singer Antonio Aguilar. And her father is multi-Grammy-winning musician Pepe Aguilar.
Months before you guys knew, we already were okay.
And by we, you mean you?
All of the parties involved.
Cristian and
all of the parties involved were okay with it. They knew what was going on. We just shared it because that's what, as public people, unfortunately, you have to do. because it's not just your relationship, it's the whole world's relationship, you know? So that's all I can tell you. I am super respectful of my husband, and I'm super respectful of everything surrounding that. You know, we're working on something together. Like, life is so amazing right now. Just as long as I turn off my phone, I just can enjoy how amazing life is.
For now, the newlywed is sharply focused on her career and the upcoming Latin Grammys, where her album Bolero is nominated for Album of the Year against other popular female artists like Karol G and Shakira.
Well, it's crazy because I remember I was the youngest person to ever perform at the Latin Grammys when I was 15. And then now it's weird because I'm still getting older, but I'm still the youngest in this category. And it's really cool because it really shows what us women can do. It's not even about me anymore. It's about, like, those young girls that don't think they can do it, that look at me and they're like, okay, maybe I can. Because you can. And because all it takes is practice and hard work and love for what you do. Of course, I feel like my last name has really opened so many doors for me. I was able to, you know, it wasn't a walk, it was a sprint. Like, I knew who to talk to. I always thought that I was going to be the daughter of Pepe, who went to the Grammys with Pepe to win another Grammy. But I never thought it was going to be Angela going to the Grammys for Angela. And it kind of started happening.
And for those wondering when she plans on becoming a mother, that's news she says you'll be waiting a while to hear.
So I think I'm not going to be telling you years. I think I'm going to be like 6 albums or 7 albums, and then maybe I'll have. Okay, all right. Well, you heard it here. We're going to take time. All right, good. Album time.
I appreciate it. So people can look forward to more hit songs from her in the future. Our thanks to Angela and Maria for that conversation. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. This is ABC News Live Prime. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We have a lot of news to get to tonight, including the death of the man believed to be the mastermind behind the October 7th attack, Yahya Sinwar, the reaction in Israel as families of those killed and still held hostage react to the news, and what Sinwar's killing means for the growing conflict. Plus, the sprint to Election Day, the dueling 2024 events tonight as Vice President Harris meets with voters in Wisconsin, and former President Trump attends the Al Smith charity dinner in New York City as he doubles down on his remarks regarding Harris's race. And why authorities now say a former Olympic athlete is now a fugitive wanted for running a $1 billion international drug ring. But we do begin with that major development in the Middle East tonight. Israeli forces have killed the head of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar. Sinwar was the architect of the October 7th horrific terror attack. Taking him out was one of the main goals of Israel's war with Hamas. He was believed to be hiding deep inside Gaza's tunnels. But 24 hours ago, an Israeli military drone looking for suspects after a firefight spotted Sinwar on the 3rd floor of a residential building sitting in the middle of rubble. Shortly after that, a sniper took him out. It wasn't until this morning that he was identified as the Hamas chief, first by sight and then by DNA. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed Israelis today, saying, as we have promised to do, we have settled the score. In Tel Aviv tonight, Israelis celebrated the death of an enemy, but there are new concerns over the fate of those hostages, including Americans still being held in Gaza. What impact will this have on the multiple fronts of this war? And what is President Biden's message for Israel tonight? Former Defense Department official Mick Mulroy is standing by, but we begin with Tom Sufi Burridge, who leads us off from Tel Aviv.
Tonight, this Israeli military drone capturing the final moments of Israel's most wanted terrorist, the mastermind of the October 7th terror attack, Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. This graphic image showing his dead body after he was killed by Israeli forces. It was IDF reservists, not special ops, who came across Sinwar by chance during a routine operation in Rafah yesterday, flying that drone into a building after a gun battle, spotting an armed man sitting in a chair, his face covered, his hand bleeding after being shot. The man throwing an object at the drone, soldiers soon after killing him. But at this point, they still didn't know it was Sinwar. In fact, it wasn't until today when a separate unit checking the building found his body and recognized it was the Hamas leader, confirming his identity through DNA, dental records and fingerprints. Tonight, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying Sinwar's death brings the end of the war closer, but it's not over yet. President Biden today speaking with Netanyahu from Air Force One, congratulating him on Sinwar's assassination. The two leaders agreeing this is an opportunity to secure the release of the hostages, vowing to work together. US officials telling us Sinwar was the main roadblock in the latest ceasefire and hostage negotiations. Across Israel today, cheers, but also fear.
Well, they're chanting enough. The hope amongst these families and friends of the hostages is that the death of Yahya Sinwar could open the door for the end of the war in Gaza and a deal to get their loved ones home.
Family members of the remaining hostages, including Americans, taking to the streets, now more concerned than ever.
I'm not shedding one single tear for the life of him, but now there's no central leadership. So the hostages are now left to the mercy of the local captor, which is much more dangerous for them.
Killing Sinwar has been one of the main goals of Israel's war with Hamas. Sinwar in hiding for more than a year and seen here in a Gaza tunnel in video released by the IDF in February. Today, the IDF posting 3 words: eliminated Yahya Sinwar. Vice President Harris today saying justice has been served.
Sinwar was the mastermind of October 7, the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust.
And saying this about his killing.
The United States, Israel, and the entire world are better off as a result.
And tonight, Sinwar's assassination dealing a major blow to Hamas amid the threat of wider escalation in this region.
Our thanks to Tom Sufi Burridge. New details tonight about the final hours of Liam Payne, the One Direction star who died in a fall from a balcony in Argentina. Newly released 911 calls reveal hotel workers reaching out for help out of concern for Payne's erratic behavior and fears for his life. Meanwhile, his bandmates are talking about his loss. Louis Tomlinson saying, "I lost a brother." And Zayn Malik in a post, "I will cherish all the memories I have with you." Our Trevor Ault has the latest.
Tonight, disturbing new details in the tragic death of One Direction member Liam Payne. Late yesterday, the 31-year-old pop star falling about 40 feet from his third-floor hotel room in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Paramedics pronouncing him dead at the scene. The security ministry now tells ABC News the singer jumped from the balcony, but authorities are still investigating if it was intentional. He is believed to have been alone in his hotel room, but reports say earlier the singer had been acting aggressively and erratically in the hotel lobby. A concerned hotel manager making this 911 call in Spanish requesting help.
Y necesitamos que nos envíen a alguien urgente para una habitación que tiene balcón y bueno, estamos un poco con temor de que haga algo que le ponga en riesgo su vida.
The prosecutor's office confirms these photos shared with ABC News were taken inside Payne's hotel room, appearing to show drugs and a smashed television. A preliminary autopsy report saying Payne's death was a result of multiple traumas and internal and external bleeding, adding Payne didn't seem to adopt a reflex posture to protect himself and that he could have fallen while in a state of semi or total unconsciousness. Overnight, shocked fans gathering outside the Casa Sur Hotel. Payne had been in Argentina since the beginning of October when he attended the concert of former One Direction bandmate Niall Horan. Payne seen dancing in the crowd.
Morning, everybody.
He posted this video to Snapchat just hours before his death. Payne leaves behind a son. Tonight, his family saying, "We are heartbroken. Liam will forever live in our hearts and we'll remember him for his kind, funny, and brave soul." And for the first time, his former bandmates speaking out in a joint statement, "We're completely devastated by the news of Liam's passing. We will miss him terribly."
Our thanks to Trevor Ault. With just 19 days now until the presidential election, former President Donald Trump's Vice President Kamala Harris then blasted Trump, saying the country and the world saw the violence that day. Just a short time ago, Harris addressed a crowd in Wisconsin and had this to say.
Now, we here know January 6th was a tragic day for our country. It was a day of terrible violence with attacks on law enforcement. 140 law enforcement officers were injured that day. Law enforcement officers were killed that day. And what did Donald Trump say last night about January 6th? He called it, quote, a day of love. And we are all clear. The American people are exhausted with his gaslighting. Exhausted. Enough. Enough.
Tonight, the moment in that Trump town hall, what that voter asked and the subsequent fallout. Mary Bruce reports from Wisconsin tonight.
Tonight in battleground Wisconsin, Vice President Kamala Harris taking aim at Donald Trump for his new comments calling January 6th a, quote, day of love.
We here know January 6th was a tragic day. It was a day of terrible violence. There were attacks on law enforcement. 140 law enforcement officers were injured. Some were killed. And what did Donald Trump say last night about January 6th? He called it a, quote, a day of love.
Trump's comments came in a Univision town hall.
Buenas noches, señor Trump.
In response to a question from a Republican voter, Ramiro Gonzalez, who told the former president he was disturbed by his actions on January 6th.
Of thousands.
Though Trump says the crowd on January 6th didn't come because of him, he was the one who told them to travel to Washington, promising, quote, it will be wild. Tonight, that voter saying he won't be voting for Trump, quote, because he didn't tell me the truth. And Harris not holding back.
It points out something that everyone here knows. The American people are exhausted with his gaslighting.
In the final 2.5 weeks of this campaign, Harris warning Trump is a danger to America, particularly after saying he would use the military on what he calls the enemy within. In a contentious interview with Fox News, Harris pushing back when the interviewer played a clip of Trump denying it all.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening.
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you...
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy.
Our thanks to Mary Bruce for that. So much more to get to tonight. The former Olympic athlete turned fugitive, who authorities say is the mastermind behind a $1 billion international drug ring, and the mysterious tar balls washing ashore on one of Australia's most popular beaches.
I'm Faith Abube at the International Airport in Montego Bay, Jamaica. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Welcome back, everyone. We're tracking several headlines around the world. Tonight, authorities say a former Olympic athlete is now a fugitive, wanted for running a $1 billion international drug ring. The suspects allegedly shipping tons of cocaine into the U.S. and Canada. The ring accused of hiring hitmen to kill anyone getting in their way. A mass funeral has taken place for those killed in a deadly tanker explosion in Nigeria's northern state on Tuesday. More than 150 people were killed. At least 50 others are continuing to receive treatment in the hospital. Nigeria's president says authorities will conduct a review of fuel safety procedures. In Sydney, Australia, that country's famous Bondi Beach has reopened after it was closed because of mysterious tar balls that washed ashore. The dark, sticky golf ball-sized blobs washed up starting Tuesday at 7 local beaches. People had been advised to not swim or touch them. Authorities are investigating the cause. Tonight, we wanted to take a closer look at the inspiring story of Christopher and Dana Reeve and their family. The new documentary, Superman, takes us inside their lives before and after a catastrophic injury left Christopher paralyzed. I spoke with Reeve's children, including ABC News' own Will Reeve, as they share their journey through grief after the loss of their dad and Will's mom, Dana Reeve. Here's part of that conversation. Thank you all so much for joining us for this really important, moving conversation. I want to start actually in a very unconventional way, because obviously on the face of it, this movie is about Superman and about Christopher Reeve. But really, I think it's almost a subplot is the strength, courage, and superpower of love and devotion of Dana. And so I'm just wondering what you all think is the message that you would like viewers to come away with regard to your mom.
That's kind of you to say, and glad you noticed, right? Because yes, it's called Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, but there is no Christopher Reeve story without Dana Reeve, without my mom, and she was a singular gift to the world. She brought such grace and grit and compassion and courage and all these other things, not only her relationship with our dad, but to her role as a mother and ultimately as a caregiver and as a public figure. And she did it all with a smile on her face.
You have this gift, this treasure trove of footage.
How does it feel to be riding your bike, sir?
If someone had told me before my injury that you could teach a kid to ride on his own just by talking to him, I would have said that that was impossible.
What came first? Was it that we have all this, we should do something with this, or there was a desire to make a movie? And by the way, we have this whole backstory.
It was kind of a combination. This all started when I was cold emailed by an archive specialist based in the UK who wondered if we had home movies and we had this material and if we'd ever thought about doing something. And coincidentally, we had just kind of boxed up a family home, and we knew what we had. We talked amongst ourselves, and we thought, if we were ever going to do it, now's the right time. So it started there, and we really have Dana to thank. She was the family documentarian.
And part of that story in the film, we hear from both of you. Will, you were obviously just 2 years old at the time that the accident happened, but just kind of give us a sense of how you all found out, and then your first moment, you know, seeing your dad.
So we were so young at the time. Will was only 2. He turned 3 when our dad was still in the intensive care unit. I was 11 at the time, and Matthew was 15. And we got the phone call from Dana saying, this terrible thing has happened. Get here as quickly as you can. And I remember we were apart at the time. You were up in London, and just rushing to find airplane tickets and jump on that plane and then fly over to the hospital where he was in Virginia. But what's amazing about Dana is she knew that the most important thing was for us to be there and to be with Dad. And so literally we got off the plane, got to the hospital, and then we were right in there with him. And, you know, he was in the intensive care unit, hooked up to every machine imaginable. But she said to us, you know, that's still him. He's still there. You go hold his hand and you tell him that you're here and that we're all here for him. And that's really just how we approached all those years after the accident too, is, you know, being together is the most important thing.
Did it change the way he became as a father for the 3 of you?
I mean, completely. I mean, he went through a very severe near-death experience that left him paralyzed, and that's going to change anyone. But it also changed the ways we could interact together. We couldn't go skiing or sailing or swimming and things like that, but we could spend time together. And I think also just going through everything that he went through, he became more reflective, became sort of more spiritual and meditative and sort of aware of what relationships really mean and what was important.
There is also another moment, a woman who's interviewed who said that prior to him really bringing this attention to spinal cord injury and disabled people, she said that disability was not part of humanity, which I thought was such a profound thing to say. And I'm wondering, with that said, what you all would like to see for the future of the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation.
We are so proud of the legacy of that foundation and the work that it's continuing today. When my dad had his accident, people would talk about spinal cord injury research as the graveyard of neuroscience, not even worth paying attention. You have an accident, you're in the intensive care unit for a little bit, and then you get sent home or get sent to an institution. And that is not the case today. There have been hundreds of millions of dollars invested in spinal cord injury research, and people are seeing improved mobility and quality of life.
And it has a dual mission and a dual legacy. It's the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, and its mission statement or slogan is today's care, tomorrow's cure. My mom was focused on getting us through each day and making sure that Dad was okay and our family was okay and that we could get from point A to point B, literally and figuratively. And that is where the Paralysis Resource Center came from. There now is a handbook for families that are dealing with this terrifying event. There are resources that are deployed at a federal level and on a more personal and community-based level that directly focus on quality of life for people impacted by paralysis.
And how about you being in a cameo in the upcoming Superman?
I don't know what I can say, Lindsay. Maybe we'll talk off air. No, it is a nice full circle moment. I think I have like half a line in the upcoming Superman relaunch. In all seriousness, what was nice about it, the reason that I jumped at the chance, aside from it being a fun thing to do for a day, was we realized, and this whole process of bringing this film out into the world has made us realize, again, on maybe even a bigger level, just how much our dad meant to the world, especially as Superman. To know that he matters so much to people in that role, I understood immediately and innately, like, oh yeah, I gotta do this. It's gonna, it's not about me, it's about the people who loved him.
Thank you so much for sharing the family story, really. I think it's a gift for us all. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And still to come, are you down bad for Halloween decorations? Don't wait a fortnight to enjoy a spooky setup. We're getting a look at the lawn layout of your wildest dreams and hear about the anti-hero who inspired it all. Down in New Orleans, Halloween decorations are nothing to shake off. And for 20 years, the owner of an iconic mansion on one of the city's famous streets has been decorating for the spooky season with skeletons. This year, the setup is entering a new era. Reporter Kenny Lopez from our partner station WGNO gives us a tour.
At the Skeleton House NOLA, it's the dawn of a new era, the Terror Swift Scaras Tour.
13 different tailors and one football player that you might recognize.
These tailor versions of the pop star are popping up in Llewellyn Berger's boneyard with the help of her 11 grandchildren.
So we put our little family minds together because we're all a little bit crazy and came up with all these different ideas. My younger grandchildren did all the friendship bracelets, so it was a family affair.
All these skeletons are tailor-made.
Earlier career was in fashion, so I really liked doing this. A lot of the outfits are former outfits of any one of our children or grandchildren. Several of them are gymnastics outfits, so I had fun sewing a lot of the outfits. I Mod-Podged every face so they'd have a different singing shape. I hope you notice the eyelashes. Her fingernail polish had to match the color scheme. The hairstyles are different on every single one. It really kind of took one full day per skeleton because I really wanted to honor her. She's such an icon.
Spooky season is upon us. Our thanks to Kenny for that. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.